Okay. So today we're actually going to be getting into Esther just a little bit, but we're going to start. Let me go ahead and share this screen here if I can. Let me get out of this again and go back to that other screen. Sorry. 50 things going on. Where did it go? I'm looking for it. I got to download that. That's what it is. That's why it wasn't showing up. Okay, now we're good. Well, no. It's gonna be different because it's not in your Bible. So it's an apocryphal book, part of what we're gonna read. So
I thought we were in Zechariah 13.
we well, let's see.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, now we'll share the screen. Okay, sorry for the delay online, but yeah, we're in Zechariah chapter 13. We're starting at verse 7.
Oh, that's why.
So,
sound like verse 11.
So yeah, if someone wants to do 7 through 8.
Chapter 13.
Zechariah chapter 13, 7 through 8.
Awake, O sword, against my shepherd and against the man, my associate, declares the Lord of hosts. Strike the shepherd, that the sheep may be scattered, and I will turn my hand against the little ones. And it will come about in all the land, declares the Lord, that 2 parts in it will be cut off and perish, but the third will be left in it.
Okay. This is a part of the new prophecy that's happening. Some people say it already happened with the exile. Others say it comes when Jesus arrives, and that this is a prophecy of Jesus being struck as the shepherd. And then after his ascension and after the Romans scatter the Jews, you've got the 2/3 being struck down. Well, that obviously we don't think has happened unless you want to count something like the Holocaust or something. So there are some precedents that can be used to see if that came true, but we believe there's still to come. So in some cases. So, verse 9, I'll get that. This third I will put into the fire. I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name, and I will answer them. I will say they are my people, and they will see the Lord is our God. So that third that's left is going to be refined. They're going to be special. Jews are already special, but this one's going to be more special. Some evangelical scholars have said that this may be the 144,000 quote unquote Jews during the tribulation that go out as messengers of God. They're especially prepared for that. So
I hadn't heard that one.
Okay. On to Zechariah 14. If someone will read 1 through 3.
You want that one, Wendy?
There. Watch for the day of the Lord. Watch for the day of the Lord is coming. When your possessions will be plundered right in front of you, I will gather all the nations to fight against Jerusalem. The city will be taken, the houses looted, and the women raped. Half the population will be taken into captivity, and the rest will be left among the ruins of the city. Then the Lord will go out to fight against those nations as he has fought in times past.
Okay, so this is believed to be a post-exile prophecy of a pre-exile thing, meaning it's a prophecy that got stuck in here. It wasn't included anywhere else, but it's a prophecy that had already happened.
So this is a hindsight thing?
This is a hindsight. At least that's what they think it is. Well, that's what a lot of the things are. A lot of these writings were written after the exile have come back, and now they're writing them down as they remember. Okay, so so Zechariah 14, verse 4 and 5.
I get it. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west. forming a great valley with half of the mountain moving north and half moving south. You will flee by my mountain valley, for it will extend to Azel. You will flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and the holy ones with him.
Okay. So this, again, this is one of those things where the prophet is seeing these things. You can't differentiate between what's happening soon, what's happening later. 1 foot east of Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives will be split from east to west. And the other will be on the other side of the valley. This is believed to be the second coming of Jesus. When Jesus actually comes. So
That would be the split then.
correct. But
That wouldn't be the way I was saying it.
but it's taking place before the judgment of the sheep and goats. Now remember, the
Okay.
sheep and goats is this division of Jews who actually believe Jesus is the Messiah and those who refuse to believe Jesus.
Okay.
Sheep and goats is for the Jews.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, now, is this supposed to, no, stupid question. This isn't supposed to actually have happened. I mean, this valley created. by
Not
mountains
yet.
moving.
Not yet.
I mean, like the Red Sea.
Well,
I
there's
mean,
definitely,
physically.
there's definitely you could draw a connection between the two, but no, this is believed to be a foretelling, not a looking back now.
Okay.
This is when Jesus returns. Jesus ascended into heaven after his resurrection. He will return again. Now, some confuse his return with coming in the clouds and gathering up the people from the earth, that what they call the rapture.
Yeah.
He won't touch the ground at that point.
Mhm,
His second coming comes 7 years later
mhm.
when he actually touches the ground, and that's what this is
That's
talking about.
okay.
I'm gonna ask a silly question, because I must have missed something. How do we know that this is, what you said is that this is the predicted the second coming? It doesn't say anything. does it?
We don't.
Oh, it's something that's being interpreted then.
Mhm.
Okay.
We won't know until it does. But based on the language, based on the way it's placed in, we've seen other prophets talk about kind of the same thing with the same descriptions. And of course, we have the benefit of the New Testament
Mhm.
to look back on
Well,
that they
that's part of
didn't.
the budget, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, 6 through 8.
Want to read in?
I'll try it.
6, okay.
On that day, there will be no light, nor cold, or frost. It will be a unique day without daytime or nighttime, a day known to the Lord. When evening comes, there will be light. On that day, living water will flow out from Jerusalem, half to the eastern sea and half to the western sea, in summer and in winter. How far?
Through that's it.
Okay.
So does this sound familiar at all? When we were in
Water is important.
when we were in Ezra, when we were starting to read Ezra, we were seeing the rebuilding of the temple. Remember I showed all that little video and thing, that river flowing right through the middle of it.
Mhm.
This is a connection between that and the New Jerusalem that is to come. The reason we think that this describes specifically the New Jerusalem to come is because there's no sunlight nor cold or frosty darkness. It's a unique day, a day known only to the Lord, no distinction between day and night, because God will be the light.
Mhm,
There will be no need for light.
mhm.
So that scholars believe that's a reference to the New Jerusalem that we read about in Revelation.
So that's very interesting, though, the river
Yeah, well,
flowing to the east, to the Dead Sea, and to the west, to the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
You gotta go over some mountains.
It's not the Jordan, because the Jordan goes north and south.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but
this is a new
that
river.
Mediterranean, you gotta go over
Mhm.
mountains.
So,
That's a big step.
okay, 9 through 11.
And the Lord will be king over all the earth, and in that day, the Lord will be the only one, and his name the only one. All the land will be changed into a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem. But Jerusalem will rise and remain on its site from Benjamin's gate, as far as the place of the first gate to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the king's wine presses. And the people will live in it, and there will be no more curse, for Jerusalem will dwell in security.
Okay,
Well,
so that continues on the look of New Jerusalem.
big stuff.
Are those
We'll
gates
be
by that-
secure.
Are those gates still by that name?
Well, he's using names based on his mind of what the temple looks like in his day. So there's the Benjamin gate, first gate, corner gate. But we know from descriptions in Revelation that the New Jerusalem is going to have 12 gates. They're going to be named after two things. They're going to be named after the disciples. Each of the disciples will have their own gate. And they'll also be named after the tribes of Israel. So this does fit with Benjamin.
Wow.
Okay, but they'll also each have their own precious stone assigned to them. So, and of course, that's not listed here. Okay, 12 through 14.
And the Lord will send a plague on all the nations that fought against Jerusalem. Their people will become like walking corpses, their flesh rotting away. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongues will rot in their mouths. On that day, they will be terrified, stricken by the Lord with great panic. They will fight their neighbors hand to hand. Judah too will be fighting at Jerusalem. The wealth of all the neighboring nations will be captured, great quantities of gold, silver, and fine clothing.
Now, this is Zechariah getting things confused a little bit again. Now we've jumped back in time a little bit to during the tribulation period, when the nations gather to go against Israel. And they're going to be protected, very similar to what happened in, 1972, the 7-Day War. Whatever it was.
67.
This was it 1967? Okay. The 7-Day War, when all the, you had 3 or 4 nations that went to attack Israel, and Israel miraculously came out of that. They had no
Yeah.
defense.
Right.
This is going to even be better because God and the holy angels are going to be defending Israel. And so all those nations that come against Israel are going to be destroyed. And that some would say it's the Battle of Armageddon. That's a separate battle. So,
I'm sure to get the message when Israel fights a three-front war and wins.
without doing a whole lot.
Well, they haven't gotten the message yet.
Yeah.
15 through 17.
Silver plague will strike the horses and mules and camels and donkeys and all the animals in those camps. Then the survivors from all the nations that have attacked Jerusalem will go up year after year to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, and to celebrate the rest of the Feast of Tabernacles. Did you want to read 17?
Mhm.
If any of the peoples of the earth do not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord Almighty, they will have no rain.
This part of it is a little confusing. It could relate to the same reference to the after the New Jerusalem is settled. There will be people that survive the tribulation that have still refused to
The
acknowledge
thing that
Christ.
gets me on this one,
So-
Michael, is that they will appear, will worship the King,
Mhm.
the Lord Almighty. We've always heard so far the Lord Almighty, but never God referred to as the King.
Well, Jesus or God will reestablish the throne once the tribulation period's over. Now, there will, some believe that in that millennial period, that 1,000 years, there will be humans, humans that survived all this living into that. So that could describe that. It could describe the New Jerusalem, which is prior to the millennium. It could be a lot of different things, but we know we assume that it's part of that same time frame.
So I'll get this one, Fran.
18 through 20.
If the Egyptian people do not go up and take part, they will have no rain. The Lord will bring on them the plague he inflicts on the nations that do not go up to celebrate the Festival of Tabernacles. This will be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all the nations that do not go up to celebrate the Festival of Tabernacles. On that day, holy to the Lord, will be inscribed on the bells of the horses. And the cooking pots in the Lord's house will be like the sacred bowls in front of the altar.
So during that time frame when Jesus is king over, Jesus has come back to earth and has established the kingdom. Though during that millennial period or during that time frame when humans are still alive, along with saints that have returned with Jesus and all that, like I said, it gets convoluted, but we'll just go on that brief description there. That the temple still in the New Jerusalem is going to, everything in there is going to be human made, but it's going to be made sacred. And so it's nothing, while in Jerusalem, in the New Jerusalem, everything's going to be sacred. So humans, imperfect humans, will not be able to enter New Jerusalem. They'll have to live outside of that.
Huh. Well, now, is the New Jerusalem just the temple?
No, it's not, but they won't be able to go into the temple. Kind of like a thing of the court of Gentiles, the court of Jews. Okay, that kind of thing.
So I thought it was interesting there, holy to the Lord.
That is
Will
a
be
name.
inscribed on what? On the bells of horses and the
Yeah.
cooking pots.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Everything is going to have God's name on it. Going into the military, remember you put your name on your underwear and stuff.
Right.
God's going to do that with everything.
Even cooking.
This is mine. This is mine. This is
Yeah,
mine.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
mine. Okay, verse 21 of Zechariah 14.
And every cooking pot in Jerusalem and in Judah will be holy to the Lord of hosts. And all who sacrifice will come and take of them and boil in them. And there will be no longer a Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts in that day.
Okay, that can be taken two different ways. We don't quite know. There will no longer be a Canaanite in the house of the Lord Almighty. That could mean that either everyone has been, even Gentiles have been grafted into this children of God primary. Or it could mean that those that are hated by, or I say hated, those that have refused to acknowledge that are still living will not be allowed in there. So you could take it as a literal, or you could take it as a figurative. That the reason no Canaanite will be in there is because no one is considered a Canaanite anymore. That
My
makes sense.
footnote says Canaanite, symbol of all unscrupulous unbelievers.
Well, that's because they were not the chosen people when Israel
Yeah.
came out of Egypt.
That's
Yeah.
who they took the land
Right.
from. They're no good bastards.
So I'll read, now we're going to Ezra chapter 6. And I'm going to read verse 14, the second half of that, because we get back into a narrative now.
Okay,
You gotta find it first.
Okay.
Ezra 6.
Ezra 6, the second half of 14,
Where is Ezra?
right before Nehemiah.
And we'll read from where, 7?
Ezekiel. It's not in my
It's
Bible.
after Chronicles.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
It's down at the bottom of your tab. but what
Yes,
you
it
couldn't
is. I
find
couldn't
it.
find it.
like finding the couch all of a sudden.
I stuck in and edited it.
Must have.
Chapter 6, second half of 14. They finished building the temple according to the command of the God of Israel and the decrees of Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes, kings of Persia. The reason I mentioned that is because Artaxerxes plays an important role in Esther. And of course, we know it was according to the decrees. Remember, the people that didn't like it, they went to complain to Cyrus or Darius. Went to complain, and okay, well, we don't have that proof here. Let's search out. Let's find that proof. And they found it in another city,
Yeah.
filed away in another city, but they found it nonetheless.
Oh, in other words, they formed a committee.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
but it proved that yes, that the Jews were given permission to build a temple. That was the whole thing. So they finished building the temple now. So we have had a time jump from the time the exiles started coming back
Okay,
till right now has been about 80 years.
right,
Okay.
right.
So it took them 80 years from the time they started building the temple till the time of now.
Huh.
Okay,
Okay.
so we've had a time, it's like one of those TV shows where you go from one season to the next season, and all of a sudden there's been 7 years missing.
Uh-huh,
You know,
yeah.
New people on the show, you
Yeah,
have no clue
tell
who
you.
they are.
More like changing channels.
Okay, so continuing on in Ezra 6, 15 through 17.
Wendy?
The temple was completed on March 12th during the 6th year of King Darius's reign. The temple of God was then dedicated with great joy by the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the people who had returned from exile. Through 16, you
Mhm.
say?
I will say that completed, the temple was completed is not entirely accurate. That was the altar that was completed in the sixth year of Darius. Okay, so go ahead with 17.
Oh, I'm sorry. During the dedication ceremony for the temple of God, 100 young bulls, 200 rams, and 400 male lambs were sacrificed, and 12 male goats were presented as a sin offering for the 12 tribes of Israel.
And where did all these bulls and lambs and rams and goats come from?
Isn't that a good question?
Well, we got the answer a couple weeks ago. Remember the people that complained and they came up with here, I'll go this way. They came up, when they found the document that said this, well, Darius told them that, you know what, you tried to thwart all these plans and you tried to go against the decree of this, but here we go. You're going to be responsible for providing everything they need now.
Yeah.
So that's where all these come from, are that group of people who were trying to sabotage the building of the temple.
Must have got busy.
How does that work out? How does that sound that they got their due? 18 through 20.
I'll do that. And they install the priests in their divisions and the Levites in their groups for the service of God at Jerusalem, according to what is written in the book of Moses.
What's the book of Moses?
The book of Moses.
That's the Torah. That's the first 5 books.
Oh, Torah, I was saying.
Okay, you
Thought you
continue.
meant what book of the Bible?
No, you can continue.
On the 14th day of the first month, the exiles celebrated the Passover. The priests and Levites had purified themselves and were all ceremonially clean. The Levites slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the exiles, for their relatives and priests and for themselves.
Okay, so they're starting back. The first thing they did was they purified the priests. That way they could start doing
Right.
sacrifices. Then they purified the utensils and all that. Now they're starting their all of their sacrifices, but it just happens to be Passover too. So 21 through 22.
It's Paul.
So the Israelites who had returned from the exile aided together with all who had separated themselves from the unclean practices of their Gentile neighbors in order to seek the Lord, the God of Israel. For 7 days, they celebrated with joy the feast of unleavened bread,
That's the
because
Passover.
the Lord had filled them with joy by changing the attitude of the king of Syria, so that he assisted them in the work on the house of God, the God of Israel.
Okay. It's interesting that he would mention the king of Assyria. Remember where Ezra came from. Remember, he was exiled into Assyria. He was part of that first group that went from the northern kingdom. So when he came back, he was back before some of those Babylonians, the ones who were taken to Babylon were. So, okay. So that's why he would say king of Assyria, not king of Babylon.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then verse 6, at the beginning of the reign of Xerxes or Artaxerxes, the enemies of Judah lodged an accusation against the people of Judah in Jerusalem. Now that is where that came into play. Okay, so the complaint was lodged. So we've shifted time. The reason we're doing that is because the very next verse, we're going to lead into how that could have played out. We're going into what we call the Greek Esther, or the additions to Esther. They're not in our Bible. I can have a printout for y'all if y'all like it. There's like 7 additions to it or 7 extra chapters. We're going to go through 1 or 2 of them today. But what it does is they were found in a specific order. And so they're not always in order as to where things are. So this is called the edition A, even though it was like the 5th one found. They have shifted it to a time prior to or during what all is going on. Yeah, it's Townsend. It's Townsend Day for breaking stuff. So
Let me out of here.
the only translation I could find the additions in was the NRSV. So the language is going to change just a little. Right?
Okay.
So this is not.
Correct. In your Bible, you'll notice there's 10 chapters. Okay. So what they've done, this is called Edition A to Esther, and most scholars have titled that chapter 11, not bankruptcy. So, and we start in verse 2 because verse 1 has to do with kind of just out of nowhere, it just doesn't fit. So if someone wants to read 2 through 5.
In the 2nd year of the reign of
Artaxerxes.
Artaxerxes the Great, on the 1st day of Nisan, Mordecai, son of Jair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin, had a dream. He was a Jew living in the city of Susa, a great man, serving in the court of the king. He was one of the captives whom King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had brought from Jerusalem with King Jeconiah of Judea. And this was his dream: noises and confusion, thunders and earthquakes, tumult on the earth. Sounds like the other night.
Okay, so Mordecai, we're going to hear a lot about Mordecai when we get to Esther or in Esther.
Right.
He was taken probably as a child, like Daniel was, during the Babylonian exile. And he has worked his way up and he's serving in the court. Okay. So he's got this dream and noises of confusion, thunders and earthquake, tumult on earth.
So we got Nissans, how come we don't have Toyotas?
That's because we haven't gotten to that.
Okay, we'll get Toyotas.
So 6 through 10.
2 great dragons came forward, both ready to fight, and they roared terribly. At their roaring, every nation prepared for war to fight against the righteous nation. It was a day of darkness and gloom, of tribulation and distress, affliction and great turmoil on the earth, and the whole righteous nation was troubled. They feared the evils that threatened them and were ready to perish. Then they cried out to God, and at their outcry, as though from a tiny spring, there came a great river with abundant water.
Okay. 2 dragons coming to both ready to fight, and it's believed that those are talking about the Assyrians and the Babylonians.
You're wanted at the hospital.
No. I'll get back with them. Okay, 11 through 12.
Light came.
I can't read it, so. let's see it.
Go ahead, Luke.
Light came and the sun rose, and the lowly were exalted and devoured those held in honor. Mordecai saw in this dream that God had determined what God had determined to do. And after he awoke, he had it on his mind, seeking all day to understand it in every detail.
Pretty self-explanatory. Now on to Edition A, chapter 12, because this was part of it too. So verses 1 through 4.
Now Mordecai took his rest in the courtyard with Gabbatha and Pharaoh, the 2 eunuchs of the king who kept
I
watch.
apologize for the names now.
That's all right. Watch in the courtyard. He overheard their conversation and inquired into their purposes, and learned that they were preparing to lay hands on King Artaxerxes. And he informed the king concerning them. Then the king examined the 2 eunuchs, and after they had confessed it, they were led away to execution. The king made a permanent record of these things, and Mordecai wrote an account of them.
Okay, so Mordecai, in service of the king, serving in the court of the king, he's taking a break. He's out in the courtyard. He hears these 2 other officials plotting to kill the king. And so he tells the king.
So if you get led away, you know what's coming.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 and 6.
After the king ordered Mordecai to serve in the court and rewarded him for these things. But Hanan, son of
Hamadatha,
Hamadatha,
Abujan,
Abujan,
the boogeyman.
who was in great honor with the king, determined to injure Mordecai and his people because of the 2 eunuchs of the king.
Okay, so Mordecai gets rewarded for selling out the 2 guys trying to kill the king.
He was
But
a
this
snitch.
one guy, this Haman, he's mad because he's in great honor to the king. It seems that Mordecai may have leapfrogged this Haman into a higher position, and he ain't happy about it.
Okay.
So he is looking to take care of Mordecai. When I say take care, I mean that sarcastically.
And to injure him.
So now we go into the first chapter of Esther 1. And some of this will make sense. Like I said, it's not included because we believe it was written well after this, but kind of like legend. But here we go. So Esther 1, verses 1 through 3.
So is that me?
Yep.
This is what happened during the time of Xerxes. Xerxes,
Mhm.
who ruled over 127 provinces, stretching from India to Kush.
Cush is Ethiopia.
At that time, King Xerxes reigned from his royal throne on the citadel of Susa.
Now remember Susa, that's where Mordecai was with him.
And in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials, the military leaders of Persia and Media, the princes and the nobles of the provinces were present.
Okay, so we're hearing a wonderful start to a story. 4 and 5.
Mine says the days of Ahasuerus.
Yeah,
Ahasuerus.
it's the same person.
Okay.
Mhm. Depends on who's translating it. They're the same person.
Okay, so you want to do what, 4 to what?
4 and 5.
For all the 180 days, he displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. When these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days in the enclosed garden of the king's palace for all the people from the least to the greatest who were in the citadel of Susa.
Okay, so he invites everybody over and throws a party for 6 months.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the 6 months, he throws a special party for everyone inside the garden of the palace. Okay, and that goes a week.
6 months.
That goes a week.
So it's like the Emmy Awards, we have one every week, don't we?
Yeah.
So
How do
six.
we get food for all those people? For all
Well,
those
maybe
months?
we'll find out, but maybe it's not important to the story.
Well, evidently not.
6 through 8.
There were hangings of fine white and violet linen, held by cords of fine purple linen on silver rings, and marble columns, couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of
Porphyry.
porphyry, thank you, marble, mother of pearl, and precious stones. Drinks were served in golden vessels of various kinds, and the royal wine was plentiful according to the king's bounty. 8:2. And the drinking was done according to the law. There was no compulsion, for so the king had given orders to each official of his household that he should do according to the desires of each person.
Okay, so this 7-day party has an open bar.
Basically, yeah.
Sounds like it.
I ran out of everything else, that's the only thing left.
Okay,
Shortage of
9
wine, Stuart.
9 through 11.
At the same time, Queen Vashti gave a banquet for the women in the royal palace of King Xerxes. On the 7th day of the feast, when King Xerxes was in high spirits because of the wine, he told the 7 eunuchs who attended him, Michael,
Mahuman, Bistha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abigtha, Thessar, and Carcass.
To bring Queen Vashti to him with the royal crown on her head. He wanted the nobles and all the other men to gaze on her beauty, for she was a very beautiful woman.
That's good. That's good. So this says on the seventh day. So everybody's been drinking, the king, even the king. And so it's 7 days of just debauchery and drinking. He's drunk and he's calling, "Get my wife in here. I want to show her off."
Here's my trophy. Here's
Yep.
my trophy.
Okay,
Now,
12.
did you have to take a special class to pronounce all these names?
No,
No.
I just can read.
Our Bible study class, you get to say A and B. And B. Yeah, makes it easier.
Okay. So 12 through 14, there's some more names there.
But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come.
Yeah, don't blame her.
Then the king became furious and burned with anger. Since it was customary for the king to consult experts in matters of law and justice, he spoke with the wise men who understood the times and were closest to the king. There was K and S and A and P and M and M and M, the 7 nobles of Persia and Media, who had special access to the king and were highest in the kingdom.
Okay. So he gets mad because she refused to come and he speaks to his 7 advisors.
Okay,
Okay.
Now, are these different people from the ones above?
Yes, the others above were eunuchs.
Yeah.
or
okay.
servants.
These guys were not.
These are kind of like, they're kind of like governors.
Oh.
He's got his council of governors. 15 through and 16.
oh, you got it?
Yeah, I lost my place. I get back to it. According to law, what must be done to Queen Vashti? He asked. She has not obeyed the command of King Xerxes that the eunuchs have taken to her. Then
Memucan.
Memucan replied hang on, I'm trying to decipher, replied in the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the peoples of all the provinces of King Xerxes. 17?
No, it's not right there. So he asked them, well, in his drunk state, they're probably drunk too. Well, she has broken this law. What should happen? Well, she's done wrong, not only against you, but because she disobeyed, she's doing wrong. She is showing other people that they can be defiant. We can't have that. So,
Do the wise men participate in drinking too?
yeah.
Not
Well, they were in there, the wives were in a separate party, but probably.
The wise, probably.
So 17 through 18.
For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women, causing them to look with contempt on their husbands by saying King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought into his presence, but she did not come.
In case you know.
And this day, the ladies of Persia and Media, who have heard of the queen's conduct, will speak in the same way to all the king's princes, and there will be plenty of contempt and anger. Oh, but still now.
And y'all guess the guy wrote this?
Can't imagine that. Can't imagine
Imagine
that,
it
right?
following each other.
Can't imagine that.
19 and 20.
So if it please the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of the Persians and Medes that cannot be revoked. It shall order that Queen Vashti be forever banished from the presence of King Xerxes, and that the king shall choose another queen more worthy than she. When the decree is published throughout the king's vast empire, husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive proper respect from their wives.
All
Either
right.
that or I'll throw
Oh,
them out.
my gag.
So-
Yeah, he's right.
So they tell him the best
Yeah,
thing for
might
you
be
to
a
do.
women's lib class now.
So his advisors tell him the best thing for you to do is to issue a decree that
Yeah.
says, well, if she don't want to be a queen,
Yeah.
as you demand it,
There you go.
then she's not gonna be a queen at all. So that's,
So in other words, you get home.
and when they see what we've done to the queen or the family of Queen Vashti, that'll set them
There
straight.
you go, there you go.
They didn't know Fran, did they?
21, 22.
King and his nobles were pleased with this advice. So the king did as Memucan proposed, he sent dispatches to all parts of the kingdom, to each province in its own script, and to each people in their own language, proclaiming that every man should be ruler over his own household, using his native tongue.
I'm not going to quote this anymore.
Remember Artaxerxes, how big his realm is. It stretches from India to
Yeah.
Ethiopia,
Mhm.
okay? So there's a lot of different languages.
Yeah.
Okay?
No wonder we're celebrating the Fourth of July.
So I'm gonna let y'all simmer on that.
Coward.
So next week, well, next time we meet, I think it'll be next week, but
Esther,
Esther,
that's the next question. Do you really want to have class next week after all this going on Saturday?
why not? Yeah, sure.
Okay, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Good man.
So next week, yeah, we're gonna continue on in Esther. She becomes queen. Sorry, I just gave the plot away. But there is another plot afoot.
Of course.
And remember that story we heard of Mordecai?
Yep.
That's your clue. So
Ah.
So, Michael, how much do we know about Dick Conti? Did somebody